Sir, step back. You match the description of a threat. The words didn't echo. They slammed. It was 6:42 a.m. inside Terminal B of Atlanta International. A line of tired passengers shuffled through TSA pre-check. Overhead, CNN murmured on silent screens. Somewhere near Gate 27, a toddler cried. And just like that, the comm cracked. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stood there in a charcoal wool coat, black carry-on in hand. Passport already extended. His name, Jordan Wells, 44, CEO of a private defense audit firm. And this morning, he wasn't traveling. He was hunting. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Jordan. The TSA agent mid-30s, square jaw. Badge reading Grant didn't even look at the documents in Jordan's hand. Just took a single step forward and spoke again, louder this time, so the crowd could hear it too. Step aside. You fit the profile. Jordan tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing, not from fear, from recognition. He had heard that phrase before. At 19, walking through a mall in Memphis, told to empty his pockets because he looked nervous. At 27, boarding a flight to Zurich, pulled aside after buying a last-minute upgrade to business class. At 33, stepping into a Capitol briefing in a tailored suit, stopped at the door while his white assistant was waved through. Now again, decades later, same energy, different uniform. Behind Agent Grant, another TSA officer, shorter, sharp voice radioed something in code. The scanner beeped red as Jordan's bag was pulled aside. Secondary screening, she said flatly. He hadn't said a word, hadn't moved, but already the energy around him had shifted, heads turned. A mother clutching a diaper bag pulled her child closer. A businessman the spots behind whispered to his colleague. What did he do? Grant leaned in, voice quiet but loaded. You don't need to talk. Just comply. Jordan's voice was low, steady. Is there a stated reason for this hold? Grant smirked. That's not how this works. Sir, you're not under arrest yet. That word lingered in the air like smoke. A tall officer in Navy uniform approached, not TSA. Atlanta Metro PD, Sergeant Badge, one hand already resting on his belt. The terminal began to hush. Jordan didn't step back. He stepped forward, but not toward Grant, toward the officer. And then he said the first thing that made the room still. Tell your chief Wells is here. I'm not leaving until I speak to him directly. The TSA agents exchanged glances. The sergeant frowned. Who? Jordan reached into his coat slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a slim black folder. Flipped it open. Inside, a federal badge, embedded chip, clearance seal. Jordan Wells, Senior Investigator, Department of Justice Internal Oversight Division. This airport is under audit, and your police chief is my first stop. And for the first time that morning, Grant didn't have anything to say. But silence was already too late, because every phone in that line was already filming. Grant's smirk didn't just vanish, it melted. He stared at the badge, then back at Jordan, then at the officer beside him like he'd missed a meeting that suddenly mattered. The sergeant leaned in. Is this real? Jordan didn't answer. He just locked eyes and said one word, calm but loaded. Verify. The sergeant tapped his radio. Dispatch. This is 3-7. DOJ Badge 9X, Jordan Wells. Need confirmation. Seconds passed. Then the response broke through the static like a verdict. Confirmed. Toy Special Investigator. Clearance level red. Proceed with protocol. You could feel it, the room itself inhaled. Grant stepped back like the floor had shifted under him. The younger agent dropped her hands to her sides. Even the businessman from earlier whispered. What just happened? Jordan hadn't moved, but the dynamic had. Mr. Wells, the sergeant began. I wasn't briefed on a federal presence. You weren't supposed to be, Jordan cut in. This airport failed a bias audit 2 years ago. I'm here to see if anything's changed. He turned toward the checkpoint, toward the phone still raised in midair, toward the silence that had grown teeth. It hasn't. Grant opened his mouth, then closed it. His fingers twitched like they didn't know whether to salute or hide. Jordan's voice stayed level. You detained me because of a coat, a bag, and a face. That's not security. That's suspicion disguised as protocol. He pulled out his phone, tapped the secure icon. The screen glowed blue. Live feed activated. DOJ compliance team now sees everything. Behind him, someone coughed. Then came the footsteps. Sharp, quick, a suit moving fast. Police Chief Camden 53, silver collar pins, practiced authority. He approached like he still thought the room belonged to him. Sergeant, he snapped. Why is this man being delayed? The sergeant didn't answer. He just stepped aside. Jordan turned. Chief Camden, he said, voice cool as steel. Camden blinked. I was told you'd be arriving next week. Jordan replied. But after the last 6 complaints tied to your terminal, I moved up the timeline. Camden shifted. Let's step somewhere private. Jordan didn't move. No, we'll speak here. With the same eyes that watched your staff profile me for nothing. Camden stiffened. His voice dropped. Mr. Wells, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. It's not. Jordan faced the crowd, his voice cutting through the air like a wire. This airport wasn't built to feel safe for everyone. Some of us walk in and are labeled threats before we even open our mouths. He turned back to Camden. On behalf of the Department of Justice, I am placing you under investigative detention for obstruction, data suppression, and enabling racial profiling within your force. Camden's eyes widened. You have no jurisdiction here. Jordan held the badge higher. I don't need jurisdiction. I have federal authority. And evidence. The terminal wasn't quiet anymore. It was watching. Phones didn't blink, but people did. And in that stillness, Grant muttered under his breath, we messed with the wrong man. He was right, because Jordan Wells didn't raise his voice. He just raised the standard. Camden's jaw clenched. His lips parted like he wanted to refute the moment, but no words came out. Because what rebuttal do you offer, Amir? Jordan didn't flinch. Didn't shift. His posture wasn't aggressive, it was undeniable. The silence stretched, not awkward, intentional. Behind them, more passengers had stopped moving through the line. A child asked, Mom, is he in trouble? The mother didn't answer. She just reached for her phone. Grant still stood nearby, his badge now a weight instead of a shield. His fingers hovered near his belt like they needed something to hold onto. Camden took a slow breath. Mr. Wells, if you have concerns, there's a formal process. Jordan cut in. You think this is about concerns? He took a step forward. I submitted a report on your terminal 6 months ago. It included 17 complaints of racial targeting during secondary screenings. You responded with a single paragraph about staffing shortages. Camden's throat tightened. Jordan raised the phone in his hand. 3 weeks ago, an elderly black veteran was detained for 42 minutes at this checkpoint. No weapons, no flag status, no apology. He swiped once. An image appeared, a time-stamped photo of the veteran in a wheelchair. Surrounded by 3 TSA agents, another swipe, a copy of the written complaint. Then another. Camden signed dismissal, resolved internally. You closed this case, Jordan said, his voice cold, without even contacting the man. Camden looked away, but Jordan wasn't done. He turned to Grant. And you, he said, I've reviewed your training logs. You flagged more passengers for suspicious posture than any other agent in this region. Grant opened his mouth. I just follow protocol. Protocol isn't law, Jordan replied. And suspicion isn't reason. It's reflection of bias. A wave of murmurs moved through the terminal. Not loud, but enough. Phones kept filming. Not because anyone told them to, but because no one wanted to forget what justice looked like when it wore a suit and didn't shout. Jordan took a deep breath, then turned back to Camden. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to expose the system you built. One where men like me are pulled aside because we fit a shape not a threat. Camden finally spoke. "This isn't fair. I didn't touch you. I wasn't even on site." Jordan nodded once. "Exactly. And yet the culture spoke for you." He lifted his phone again. "Carla," he said into the line, "initiate phase 2. Real-time escalation. Notify civil oversight and trigger documentation sync." A crisp voice responded instantly. "Confirmed. All TSA footage from Terminal B is now being logged." Officer records cross-referenced. Camden's statement entered. Camden's eyes narrowed. "You're overstepping." "No," Jordan replied. "I'm stepping in. Because you didn't." Behind them, the sergeant's radio crackled again. "Dispatch. Confirmed that Special Investigator Wells has assumed temporary field authority. Undercode 6B comms log sensed. Continue cooperation." The sergeant nodded. "Confirmed." And in that moment, something shifted in the posture of everyone around. Jordan wasn't a threat. He was the audit they never saw coming. He turned back to the crowd not to speak to them, but to be seen by them steady, composed, just existing, and for once, not being questioned for it. No shouting, no handcuffs, just silence, authority, and the long, slow crumble of unchecked power. The silence in Terminal B had a texture now. Thick, heavy, like the kind of air that wraps around you before a thunderstorm calm, but charged. Camden exhaled through his nose, straightened his shoulders, and tried to recover authority with posture alone. "I understand emotions are high, Mr. Wells," he said carefully. "But if there's a process..." Jordan cut him off, not with volume, but with precision. "There was a process. You ignored it." He didn't shout. He didn't point, but every syllable landed like a gavel. Grant took a step back. The younger TSA officer turned toward the floor. The sergeant still beside Jordan said nothing. He didn't need to. Camden's eyes darted toward the boarding gates as if looking for an exit that didn't exist. "You came here to make a scene," he said finally. Jordan's jaw tightened, not in anger, in disappointment. "I came here," he said slowly, "because 3 separate passengers, all black, all documented professionals, were detained at this terminal in the last 90 days. Their common trait, not behavior, not history, just presence." He took another step forward. "You detained a black surgeon flying to a conference, a law professor returning from DC, a 17-year-old boy with a robotics trophy in his carry-on. You flagged them, searched them, humiliated them." Camden opened his mouth again. Jordan didn't let him speak. "You think this is a show? It's not. This is a reckoning." Then he turned not to Grant, not to the sergeant, but to the people. The mother with the child, the businessman who had filmed, the teenage girl in the hoodie near the Cinnabon stand, her camera still raised. Jordan's voice carried without yelling. "This isn't about me. It's about what happens when you walk into a room and they decide you're a problem. Before you say a word." He paused. "Today, I had the badge, the title, the backup. But what if I didn't?" No one answered. They didn't have to. A few passengers lowered their phones, not out of boredom, out of respect. Camden shifted again, trying to insert himself back into the center of the moment. "Let's de-escale it. We can review footage. Follow up." Jordan's head turned, slow and deliberate. "You don't need to touch me," he said calmly. "You already triggered the audit." He tapped the screen on his phone again. Carla's voice returned instantly, clear and unshaken. "Phase 2 completed. TSA terminal logs pulled. All relevant badge data now under DOJ review. Agent Wells, please confirm if Phase 3 is to be activated." Jordan didn't look at the phone. He looked at Camden. "You know what Phase 3 is." Camden didn't answer. "It's the part where your officers get pulled, your badge access freezes, your desk goes dark." Camden's fingers flexed. "You're bluffing." "Then call the bluff." He extended the phone. "Carla, initiate Phase 3. Suspend access for Chief Camden pending review." A pause. Then, "Confirm. Access privileges for Camden Donald revoked. Notice sent to Federal Liaison." The sergeant's tablet buzzed. He looked down, then looked up. "Sir, Your badge just went red. Camden's face paled. Jordan didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just said, "You don't fix a system by yelling at it. You fix it by removing the parts that keep breaking." He stepped back, looked at Grant. "You're next if you want to be." Grant didn't speak, but in that moment, surrounded by silence, cameras, and consequence for the first time all morning, he listened. Grant didn't move. Not a word, not a shift. Just silence, the kind that creeps in when someone realizes the script they've always followed has just been burned. The sergeant held Camden's badge in his hand. Still warm, still red. The lockout was live. Camden opened his mouth and closed it again. His voice, so authoritative just moments ago, had vanished under the weight of real accountability. Jordan turned, slow, deliberate, toward the checkpoint line, toward the people. His voice stayed even. "This isn't about vengeance. This is about exposure." He looked to the crowd, no longer frozen, but awake. You can't reform what you refuse to acknowledge, and you can't acknowledge what you keep defending. A woman in a Delta uniform, standing near the boarding gate, murmured to herself, "They're really doing this." Her hand trembled around her employee tablet. Jordan nodded to her without speaking. He'd seen it before. The moment someone realizes silence wasn't neutrality, it was complicity. He turned back to Camden. "You asked for a process," he said. "Let me give it to you." He raised the phone again. Carla's voice was already waiting. "Go ahead, Mr. Wells. Patch and DOJ oversight. I want them listening live." "Channel open," she replied. Jordan didn't blink. "To Civil Division. This is Special Investigator Jordan Wells on site at ATL Terminal B. Audit 9X is in active escalation. Local enforcement has been flagged for obstruction, negligence, and repeated bias trigger incidents." He looked at Camden when he said it, not with spite, but with precision. Camden broke. "This isn't right," he said, voice rising. "You don't just show up and humiliate people in public." Jordan didn't flinch. "You didn't think it was public when your staff humiliated a 17-year-old honors student in front of his peers." His voice was lower now, but deeper. "You didn't think it was public when you denied every follow-up email, every civil rights complaint, every footage request." He stepped closer. "And you sure as hell didn't think it was public when you told that veteran, 'If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear.'" Camden's face went blank. Now it was public. Phones were still filming, but they weren't the reason the truth was loud. Jordan was. A voice broke through the terminal speakers, an automated chime. "Attention, Terminal B security personnel. Please report to Central Command for immediate briefing. Repeat, all available security staff, report to Central Command." Grant turned. That wasn't routine. That was lockdown. Jordan kept his eyes on Camden. "You won't be escorted out, you'll walk." Camden looked like he might protest, but didn't. He stepped back, slowly, toward the edge of the checkpoint. The sergeant followed, not holding his arm, but watching. Not because Jordan asked, because something had shifted and everyone in the room could feel it. As Camden disappeared through the staff hallway, a hush fell again. This time, not in fear, but in recognition. Jordan turned, not to pose but to clarify. "To those of you wondering what just happened," he scanned the room. One by one, passengers met his gaze. "This isn't the start of the audit." He paused. "This is the end of the excuse." And with that, he walked past the checkpoint. No one stopped him, not because he had power, but because now they knew it. Jordan didn't rush. He moved like the hallway belonged to him, like every fluorescent light above was a witness, not an accessory. Behind him, the checkpoint resumed slowly, mechanically, as if TSA didn't quite know whether to pretend nothing happened or admit they'd just been judged in real time. But no one stopped him. The scanners beeped, bags slid, shoes shuffled. But for a moment, every eye followed the man in the dark wool coat who had walked in alone, labeled a threat and left as the reason the system flinched. He didn't walk through. He dismantled the door. At the terminal edge, a woman in a gray blazer stood waiting, mid-30s, composed. a DOJ pen on her lapel. She held a tablet already sent to the incident log. "Mr. Wells," she said softly, "oversight confirms full chain custody. Camden's credentials have been suspended. His access log has been sealed." Jordan nodded once. "Phase 4. In motion," she replied. "We've also been contacted by a senior official at the Airline Association. They'd like a transcript." "They'll get it," Jordan said, unredacted. She hesitated. "There's also a broadcast request. A station nearby picked up a passenger live stream. It's trending." Jordan's jaw set. "Let the footage speak, not me." She nodded, stepping aside as Jordan kept walking, past Gate B17, past the Starbucks humming with screens, past a row of officers now standing at attention without being told to. He didn't acknowledge them. He didn't need to. Then a voice, not loud, but trembling. "Sir." He turned. A teenage boy stood near a vending machine, thin, hands in his hoodie pockets. He looked about 16. Wide eyes, soft voice. "Were you the guy they tried to stop earlier?" Jordan's gaze softened. He took a few steps closer. "Yes." The boy hesitated, then said, "My brother, he got stopped here last month. TSA said it was random, but he's never been the same. Didn't even want to fly anymore." Jordan crouched slightly, made eye contact. "What's your name?" "Devin." Jordan nodded. "Well, Devin, tell your brother he wasn't crazy, and he wasn't alone." Devin looked down, then back up. "I think he'll want to see this." Jordan didn't smile, but his eyes did. "Good, because this is why we don't back down." He stood up. Devin whispered, "Thank you," and vanished into the boarding zone. Jordan turned again, continuing toward the executive concourse. No applause followed him, no camera flashes, just silence, and the weight of an institution shifting, one step at a time. Near Gate B21, a woman leaned into her husband's ear. "They'll remember this," she said. They were right, not because he shouted, not because he fought, but because he didn't, because Jordan Wells did what the system feared most. He walked in calm. He left in control, and justice. It never raised its voice. It just walked. By the time Jordan reached the executive concourse, the rhythm of the airport had returned on the surface. Lattes still frothed behind glass counters. Screens still blinked with departure times. The soft murmur of overhead announcements resumed like a rehearsed apology. But under the surface, everyone who had seen him walk through Terminal B was no longer just watching. They were remembering. The TSA agents, now repositioned at their posts, weren't just scanning bags. They were scanning memory, trying to catalog the moment everything shifted and what they had said before it did. Jordan stepped into the Delta Sky Suite. The doors whooshed shut behind him, sealing off the hum of the terminal. Inside, hush, leather seating, frosted glass. No one raised a voice. A woman at the desk stood. "Good morning, sir. May I assist you?" Jordan slid his DOJ ID across the counter. She blinked, of course. Her voice lost its polish, became real. He didn't speak, just nodded once. She led him to a private meeting room, the kind reserved for executives and dignitaries, the kind where decisions usually happen after the public has moved on. But today, that wasn't the case. Jordan sat, logged into the secure terminal, waiting at the center of the table. Dozens of notifications lit up. DOJ briefings, public inquiries, one flagged message from the Civil Oversight Board. Live incident review begins in 3 minutes. Summary expected. All footage received. He glanced at the time. 7:28 a.m. Barely an hour since the moment Grant had said, "You match the description." And now, the entire system was on notice. Jordan tapped join session. A screen blinked on. 3 faces appeared. A federal judge, a senior policy analyst, and a civil rights liaison, each one nodding silently. Jordan didn't waste time. "This morning," he began, "I entered ATL Terminal B as part of an unannounced audit. Within 4 minutes of my arrival, I was profiled, delayed, and surrounded by TSA without cause." He continued, tone measured, facts precise. Despite presenting valid credentials and identification, I was accused of fitting an unspecified threat profile. The responding officers failed to cite any behavioral indicators. One officer, identified as Grant, later admitted on record he was following routine instinct. He paused. Institutional bias is not instinct. It's learned, rehearsed, protected. The judge leaned in. Was the police chief aware of your arrival? Jordan looked straight into the camera. He was aware of the audit. He didn't expect to be in it. The room fell quiet. The civil rights liaison spoke next. You acted with restraint, Mr. Wells. Jordan's jaw set. I didn't need restraint. I needed results. He clicked a button. A side panel opened on screen, a timeline of the morning's footage. Since with quotes, timestamps, badge scans. Every random search. Every moment a camera shook. Every silence that used to be just silence now part of the record. You thought silence meant surrender? Jordan said softly. It meant surveillance. The analyst nodded. Next steps. Jordan tapped twice. Uploaded the audit folder, labeled ATL_9X_final. Then he sat back, and for the first time that morning, exhaled. Outside the room, the world moved on. Flights called, bags rolled, coffee cooled. But something had shifted, even if most wouldn't see it yet. Because justice doesn't always knock. Sometimes it checks in early, watches quietly, and when the time is right, it speaks. Jordan closed the briefing window. The screen faded to black, leaving only his reflection, tired eyes, measured breath. A face that had seen too many rooms like this, silent, polished, built for power, not for justice. He stood outside the private suite. The lounge staff pretended not to notice him. They failed. Every glance followed him now, not out of suspicion, but something more complicated. Recognition, respect, and for a few, remorse. A young man in uniform, maybe early 20s, soft features, Delta badge, stepped forward, nervous. Voice low. Sir, I saw what happened. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Jordan paused, looked him in the eye. What for? The man hesitated. For not stepping in. I was near gate 17 when they surrounded you. I just froze. Jordan nodded slowly. You don't apologize for being afraid in a system designed to reward your silence. He placed a hand gently on the man's shoulder. You only apologize if you stay silent tomorrow. The man's eyes welled, but he nodded. Yes, sir. Jordan walked on, past the glass walls, past the coffee counter, past the security officer who now stood a little straighter than before. The moment he stepped back into the main terminal, he felt at the shift in atmosphere, not loud, but layered. A man in business attire gave him a nod. A mother whispered something to her daughter and pointed. A janitor paused mid-sweep and tapped his chest twice, a quiet salute. Jordan didn't smile, but his presence did, because for once, they weren't just watching a confrontation. They were watching what happened when dignity walked back through the same gate, where it had been questioned. TSA agents at the next checkpoint looked up, then down. No challenge, no words. They had learned. He reached Concourse C, where his original destination had been an internal DOJ security summit. Ironically, still on schedule, still expecting him. He checked the time, 8:03 a.m. All this in under 2 hours. At the escalator, a woman in a navy skirt suit with a federal pin stepped beside him. She'd clearly been briefed. Mr. Wells, she said, keeping pace. They're waiting in conference for A. Everyone's seen the footage. Jordan gave a quiet nod. Let them wait. She blinked, unsure if she heard him correctly. But she didn't question it. They reached the mezzanine. As they stepped off the escalator, she asked, gently, do you want me to introduce you by full title? Jordan paused, then answered without turning. If I have to announce my title to be treated with dignity, the system's already failed. She stopped walking. He didn't. Jordan moved through the wide glass doors of the conference wing, calm, silent, a presence so still. It altered the pressure in the room. Inside, rows of high-level agents, directors, and legal staff stood as he entered, unplanned, unspoken. They rose, not out of protocol, but out of respect, because something had happened that morning not on the agenda, not in the memos, but more meaningful than any bullet point briefing. The audit had ended, but the echo had just begun. The conference room held its breath, not literally, but in the way people do when they're not sure if they should speak or listen. Rows of suits and security personnel stood still. Their name tags suddenly felt small. At the front of the room, a large screen displayed a paused image. Jordan at the Terminal B checkpoint, surrounded, silent. The freeze frame alone said everything. He walked past them not in arrogance, but with authority so practiced, it didn't need to be loud. A man in a gray DOJ windbreaker stepped forward, hand extended. Wells, hell of a morning. Jordan accepted the handshake, but his expression didn't shift. Not a morning, a mirror. That shut the man up. Jordan approached the podium without ceremony. No introduction, no credentials read aloud. He didn't need them anymore. The screen behind him faded to black. He began. No agency survives without trust. No badge means anything without restraint. And no protocol matters if it only protects the powerful. He paced slowly, voice level, controlled. Today was not an anomaly. It was a ritual, one that plays out in airports, lobbies, boardrooms, quiet acts of doubt disguised as procedure. He stopped. And you know how I know that? Silence. Because none of you were surprised when you saw the footage. Several in the room looked down. Jordan's voice didn't rise, but it tightened. You all knew. Maybe not the specifics, maybe not the names, but you knew the shape of it, the look, the excuses, the aftermath. He turned toward the panel at the front, senior officials, the kind who sign off audits but rarely live inside them. To be clear, he said, I didn't walk into Terminal B today to make a statement. I walked in to watch, to test. And when I was flagged without cause, I didn't escalate. He paused. I documented. A few heads turned, unsure if that was defense or indictment. Jordan answered for them. Power doesn't reveal itself in anger. It reveals itself in precision and stillness, in refusing to perform rage for people who expect it from you. He stepped away from the podium. And if the only time a black man gets respect is after he flashes a badge, then we haven't built security. We've built submission. That landed hard. Someone near the back exhaled. Another scribbled something or maybe just needed something to do with their hands. Jordan scanned the room, not for approval, for responsibility. We don't need better apologies, he said. We need fewer triggers. He motioned to the screen again. A new image appeared, not of him, but of the veteran, the surgeon, the boy with the robotics trophy. This audit was never about me. He turned. It was about them. And for once, not a single person in that room interrupted, because Jordan Wells had said what the system wouldn't, and they were still learning how to listen. Jordan stepped down from the podium. The room didn't clap, not out of disrespect, but because applause would have cheapened it. What he said wasn't a performance. It was an indictment. And indictments don't get ovations. They get processed. He moved to a chair near the front row and sat, calm, composed, back straight, around him. The conversation hesitated to restart. No one wanted to be the first to pretend things had returned to normal. Across the aisle, a senior policy director cleared her throat carefully. Mr. Wells, given the exposure this incident has generated, do you believe our protocol needs to change immediately? Or? Jordan didn't even look up. His voice was quiet, but direct. It's not your protocol that failed. She froze. It's your instinct. He finally lifted his eyes. You build a system where protocol is only followed when someone's watching. The rest of the time, it's replaced with discretion. And you gave the discretion to people who don't know the difference between presence and threat. A younger agent, sitting to Rose's back, raised a tentative hand. Sir, if I may, what does fixing that look like? We've tried retraining. We've issued language revisions. But it doesn't seem to. Because you're trying to edit the script, Jordan cut in, without addressing who's writing it. He stood again, slowly. You don't correct bias by swapping faces. You dismantle the reflex. He moved toward the large screen again. This time, it displayed flight footage not from today, but from 2 years ago. A different black passenger, different checkpoint, same posture, same faces, same silence. These audits, he continued, aren't about scaring staff or firing a few bad actors. They're about revealing patterns, reflexes. Who gets believed without speaking? Who gets doubted without acting? He turned. You don't need new rules. You need new consequences. That one made the room shift. Because they knew he was right. He walked slowly past the screen, hands at his sides. You want to know what it means to change a system. It means not waiting for moments like today to tell you where it's broken. It means giving frontline staff less room to improvise and more accountability when they do. He paused, and if that makes some people uncomfortable, he shrugged. They were comfortable while others were being humiliated. The balance was never justice. The room was still, but in that stillness, something new had entered: clarity. Not everyone in the room was ready to act, but they couldn't unsee it, couldn't unhear it, couldn't go back to pretending every delay was random and every profile accidental. Jordan gave a final glance to the footage behind him, then said what would be quoted the next day in every newspaper that covered the story. Procedure isn't protection. It's a mirror. And today it showed us all exactly who we are. And with that, he walked out. No salute, no lingering stare. Just the quiet dignity of a man who didn't need the last word, because the truth had already said it for him. The hallway outside the conference center was quiet. Not sterile, not tense, just changed. Staff passed by with softer steps. Phones stayed in pockets. Conversations, if they happened, dropped to whispers the moment Jordan turned a corner. He didn't walk like someone who'd won. He walked like someone who had nothing to prove, which, in its own way, was louder. He passed through security again this time, escorted not by policy, but by silence. So agents held the line, but no one challenged him. No one questioned the metal and his belt buckle. No one pulled him aside just in case. He paused by the departure boards. His flight was still an hour away, and then a voice, small, nervous, from behind. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Wells?" He turned. A woman stood there, black, late 40s, uniformed, airport maintenance crew. She held a mop in one hand, a laminated badge in the other. Jordan nodded. She stepped closer, eyes darting left and right. "I saw what happened. I saw you." Her voice trembled, but her spine stayed straight. "I've worked here 12 years, watched things happen to people who couldn't say anything. Folks pulled aside for nothing, yelled at like they were trespassers in their own country." She swallowed. "But you didn't yell. You didn't swing. You just stood." Jordan looked her in the eye. "I didn't come here to be a symbol." She nodded. "I know, but you became one anyway." There was a beat. Then she added, quieter, "They didn't remember your badge. They remembered your calm." Jordan's expression shifted, not a smile, but something softer, a crease in the armor. He reached into his coat, pulled out a card. "Civil Oversight will be sending a liaison next month. Tell them I sent you. You deserve to be in the room when policies change." She took the card like it was glass, and for a second, just a second, her eyes closed. Like the weight she'd been carrying for over a decade just shifted a little. Jordan turned back toward gate C12. The walk was quiet. No cameras now. No confrontation. Just a terminal returning to normal. Except it wasn't, because normal was no longer acceptable, not after this. As he approached the gate, a flight attendant glanced up from her scanner, recognized the name, and straightened immediately. "Mr. Wells, we've upgraded your seat. No charge." He looked her in the eye. "I don't need favors." She nodded. Understood. Just respect. Jordan scanned his ticket, walked onto the jet bridge. No fanfare, no music, just footsteps and echoes. Behind him, the terminal didn't buzz. It remembered, because what Jordan left behind wasn't noise. It was proof. Proof that dignity doesn't require volume. That presence, held steady, breaks systems built on fear. And that the strongest man in the room is often the one who never has to raise his voice. Not even once. The aircraft doors sealed with a soft hiss. Jordan took seat 1A, not because it was the front row, because it faced forward. A flight attendant moved quietly down the aisle, checked safety protocols, but paused just briefly when she passed him, not with hesitation, with reverence. He didn't need extra attention, didn't want it. He had spent a lifetime earning space without needing permission, and today, he claimed that space was silence. Out the window, the runway shimmered in the morning light, planes taxied, lives moved. The world didn't know what had shifted inside this airport, but it would. It always did, just not fast enough. Jordan pulled out a small leather notebook, not government-issued, personal, worn at the edges. Inside, clip articles, handwritten notes, names. Names of people who never made it through checkpoints. Names of boys who got flagged early. Men who were handcuffed before questions were asked. Women told their anger made them dangerous. He flipped to the back page. It was blank. Until now. He uncapped a pen, wrote a date. July 26th. ATL Terminal B bias triggered, silence broken. He paused, then added one more line. He didn't change the system. He made it see itself. The captain's voice came on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying. Today's flight will cruise at 30,000 feet. Weather is clear. We'll be taking off shortly. Jordan leaned back, not to relax, but to reflect, because today wasn't a victory lap. It was a report filed in real time. A confrontation that held no fists. A verdict that walked upright, coat buttoned, badge tucked away. He didn't post about it, didn't go live, didn't make noise, but somewhere in the DOJ server room, an incident log was locked and verified. Somewhere in TSA headquarters, a training video had been rewritten. And somewhere in a teenager's phone, a 90-second clip was being shared not as a spectacle, but as a standard. At cruising altitude, the clouds outside turned gold. Jordan closed the notebook, not because the work was done, because the next entry could wait. This wasn't the end of the fight, but it was proof that the fight could be won with discipline, with resolve, with quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't surrender. The kind that makes systems flinch. The kind that doesn't scream, "Look at me." It whispers, "Watch what happens next."